Welcome. Today we're going to take a look at how we can do Java File I/O and do some reviews of how it actually works with that. So why do we want to do File I/O? Well, the console really isn't enough, and a lot of the times you're not even actually available. A lot of modern computers don't give you access to the console. You can't do anything with the command line because your permissions or availability don't have that available for you. We also don't want to just simply limit ourselves to what we can type in. Typing in values on the keyboard, that's going to take us a lot of time, and to actually do real valuations of information, try and sorting through and looking at data, we have to use File I/O to make that happen. And there's real data out there we can use with File I/O, so we really want to do that so we can do some cool projects. When we're doing File I/O, we have some actual needs we have to work with, and so the first thing we have to talk about are the imports. So java-util.scanner. Yes, you use Scanner for doing keyboard input. Guess what? We use Scanner again in here when we're working with text because it's the easiest tool built into Java. It allows for easy, quick text manipulation. It's a wonderful tool. In the java.io package, we also have the file not found exception, IO exception, and print writer tools that we want to use when we're working with that. So those are the imports you want to add to your class that are doing the file IO operations. All the stuff we're working with today is in my IO controller class, so those imports are right there for me to use so I can actually reference that inside my project. We also have to work with the try-catch block. Why do we have to use a try-catch? We can't guarantee access to the file. There's no guarantee we have access to any of these files we're specifying. They could be on a different network. They could be in something your login person doesn't have access to. You're trying to use a file that's locked for some reason. And so you can't guarantee you have access to it. So we have to wrap that inside a try-catch block. So we have to write code that will do the work for us. We can't guarantee it's going to operate. So we have to have that try-catch to actually surround that information and make it happen. We will also be using the try with resources tool because the try with resources is a more advanced version of the try catch block that allows us to automatically close the information as we're done with it. So it's like, oh, I opened this resource, now I'm going to close it as well because I want to maintain safety and security. I want to have good coding practices. We're going to look back at some of our past programming examples, look at myself even in the past as well, where we don't properly close the data set because we want to maintain proper security and stability over time. We want to have good code all the way through, starting even with our early code projects. And the associated catch block will simply handle that. And I'm going to give a quick example of that, but that's not the focus of this on how to do exception handling. But we'll put the exception handling in there so we can actually have that happen. So we are going to be using static methods as well because when we're talking about File I/O, one of the things we want to do is we want to talk about minimizing our code exposure. We don't want to expose the information to things that don't belong to it. That's why I have my I/O happening in my I/O controller class and not just the regular controller or model package of information I'm working with because that information doesn't need to be shared. So I handle all that information in its own separate class where it can do that work for it. We're also using static method because there's no internal state that needs to be maintained. We're simply sending the information it needs as a parameter. So all these methods are going to be static that we're working with to make that happen. We use our controller class as a parameter so we can have the exception handling handled outside of the bounds. And it can also send it's a nice go-between so we don't have to expose the actual IO controller class to anything else as well. So again, we can minimize the exposure with that as well for that. And again, there's no internal state, so we make that by static by default. So we can explicitly make it so we can handle those or call those methods in a static fashion. Now, reading from a file, we have a read method will have a parameters for a reference to the controller because again, we have to send everything to the method that we need to use, a string for the path of the file we want to read, and then it's going to return a string that has the contents of that file we're working on. We initialize it with an empty string because we want to make sure it has a value to return back that's not going to cause a problem. An empty string is always good for that. And inside that resource for the try, we're going to create a scanner instance using the path parameter to make a new file so that the scanner can read that file itself directly. Scanner is great. It does all that work for us. We don't have to do anything special to have file handling. We simply just create it from there. We also have a while loop, so inside the block, we can read each of the lines of that file. And then we'll also append a new line symbol with a \n so we can maintain consistency so we read the file just like it looks in there. Because remember, when you use scanner, it consumes that end of line marker, the \n, as it reads each line. We'll catch any associated exceptions that handle with that, and we'll return the text that is created as we went through and read that file. So let's go ahead and take a look at the actual code for that we make that happen. So we have my public static string, read text from file. Again, we have the control reference named app, and our string path that references the direction to that file, the address of it. Our return variable text is initialized to an empty string. We have our try with resources block where I create a scanner instance named file scanner, which is a new scanner passing it a new file created from the path that we specified as a parameter. So it loads up a scanner that can read that file right there. Boom. Creates the resource implicitly, and it automatically closes it as soon as we hit that closing squiggle. It's great. Then as long as that file scanner has a next line, so we created that scanner, if it has something in there, then the text will be append each line to it using a \n at the end, so it reads each line, boom, 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 and grabs that. I'm using a multi-catch right here so I can catch two different types of exceptions, either a null pointer exception or a file not found exception named error. Regardless of which exception I catch, I simply send that error to my handle error method so I can work with that information and display it. And then I have my return text. I can read the text that was from that. And that's a great way to read text from a file. So I just simply use a scanner and a loop to process that information. Great stuff. If I'm writing to a file, it's almost the reverse of what we did with reading. It's going to be a void method because we're simply just going to send the information off. We don't have to bring anything back in. It does, however, take a control reference, a string for the path, and a string for the text wording. We have an extra parameter of information because we have to actually send that stuff that we're going to be sending to the file as a parameter into the method. We're going to create a print writer from that path parameter and a scanner instance from the text parameter in our resources section of our try block. And then as long as the scanner has text it can scan, we're going to use the println method to write each line into the file. I know, just like system.println, but now with a print writer. It's great. And we'll catch a file not found exception if for some reason that path doesn't work. And so here we have the actual code for that example. So we have a compound resource statement right here. So I have a try, and I declare my print writer, writer is a new print writer, passing it a file from that path I specified. And then a scanner, after that semicolon, is string scanner, making a scanner from the text I'm using. So I'm using a scanner to process the text, using that right there. As long as my scanner has an next line, I'm gonna write that line. Oh, so I'll eat the line and then write the line. Great stuff, works amazingly. I catch that file not sound exception and use the app.handleError method to deal with anything at that point. So writing the file, easy right there, makes it so I can easily write text to a file using Java. Wonderful stuff. Now, if I want to use these IO methods, I have a controller class we were just mentioning as we send as a reference to all of that, and it has the associated methods that will call those IO controller methods. The load method in my controller will accept the path and calls IO controller.readText from file and returns the results. And the save method will accept the text in its path and then call the IO controller.writeText to file method. And then we have our handle error method, which will display an error if there is one that's called. So easy peasy, let's take a look at that. Here we can see the actual methods that use those methods we were talking about. Again, this is in my controller class, and so my public void handle error takes an exception as a parameter, and it just uses a JOption pane to display that message so it can display it out there. And again, this is information that the IO controller doesn't need to know, but we can have it right here so if there's any exception, anything inside the project, the handle error method can take care of it because the controller does that work. We also have our load method that takes a string path as a parameter, so it can send that from anywhere else inside the project. And a string results is set the IO controller.readText from file, passing it this, the reference to the controller itself, and that path parameter we just sent in. And return the results right there. Same thing with save. My public void save method takes the string text and path as parameters, which I then send off to the IO controller write text to file, passing a reference to the controller itself, and then the text and path parameters. This is a great way you can actually work with Java. You can use it to read and write text in your project. I hope this is helpful and you can do some great things for your project. You can make your project even cooler with this. Hope this is helpful. Cheers, see you next time, and have a good day. Bye-bye.